So hi, Katie Boyd. How are you?
I'm good, Mr. Peters. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We probably have some folks seeing us right now live on YouTube. Um, and if you are watching this Q&A from YOSA, you can ask questions in the chat window, and we will do our best to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. But Ms. Boyd, I wanted to start with you, asking you to tell us a little bit about your journey. You've been working with YOSA in various capacities now for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
What led you on this journey? You do all kinds of different things as a conductor, as a cellist, as a teacher. What made you go into music and choose this as your career?
Well, I started playing cello in seventh grade. Before that, I was involved in music and choirs and things like that. But then, one day my older sister brought home a violin, and I wanted to be cool like her. So I was like, well, I got to join orchestra, but I can't pick the same thing she's playing because I have to be different. So I ended up picking cello, and it turned out to be a great decision because I fell in love with it. And I was very involved in orchestra and music throughout middle school and high school. I did the region orchestras, and I was involved in YOSA my whole time in high school, which was an amazing experience. And I was so lucky to have phenomenal music teachers. My middle school orchestra teacher, my private cello teacher, my high school teacher, they really shaped my musical journey and ultimately my life. But even though I was so involved in music, I actually never thought, as I was, deciding where to go to college and what I want to be when I grow up, I never thought, I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to be a music teacher and a conductor. I was like, nah, that's not for me. I'm involved in other things. And, I still loved music. But I decided to go to college and major in photojournalism because I was really interested in photography and stuff. So I moved to New York, and I was studying photojournalism, and really I had separated myself from music. I was just playing in a small community orchestra while I was studying photography, and luckily it didn't take me too long to figure out how much I missed music. I was only there maybe like 3 months, and I was like, wow, this is not right. Something does not feel right. So I decided, I missed it so much. I moved back to San Antonio, and once I made that decision to go back to music, all the other decisions just kind of felt easier. I was like, yep, music education, that sounds right. So I went to UTSA, and I started majoring in music education, and I was playing in the orchestra with Eugene Dowdy and taking all the methods classes and everything. And it just felt like that was where I was supposed to be. And I loved it. And I learned so much. And I got a job teaching orchestra at Bernal Middle School about 6 years ago. And as soon as I started, I was like, yep, this is it. This is where I want to be, sharing music with students, and growing as a musician myself. And I can't imagine not being involved in music in some capacity in my life. But now it's really, again, the center of my life. And I teach and I perform. I still love playing cello. I play in the Symphony of the Hills in Kerrville and the San Antonio Sinfonietta, back when we were still all together and playing, but I'll return to them as well. And Mozart Festival Texas, which is a group that I love playing in every year. And I still teach private lessons a little bit too. So lots of different ways that I'm involved in music, and I love each of them. Yeah.
So what's your favorite kind of music to play on the cello? What your favorite composer, your favorite style? What do you most like doing on the cello?
Well, I guess my favorite thing is sitting in the orchestra, being in that cello section, being a part of something so big, and collaborating with other musicians. That's my favorite thing to perform. Really, it doesn't matter what the music is, just that working together team aspect of it is my favorite thing. But my favorite composer, that's a hard question. I could list composers for days, but I do remember my first favorite composer was Brahms, and I still love Brahms, but there's many more that I could add. But I love Brahms so much that my first car, I changed the license plate to say Brahms, just so everybody knew I was, a fancy musician that loved Brahms.
I actually remember that car. I remember that license plate from when you and
Oh,
I met. Back in 2009, I remember seeing that car and the license plate in the parking lot at Good Samaritan Community Services, and that was one of my first impressions of you. And
oh no.
I knew I liked you even before I saw that. But once I saw that, fellow Brahms fan, because for me Brahms is as great as it gets. I mean, there's lots of music I love, but the older I get, the more I gravitate back to Brahms. It's just such powerful.
Yeah.
So tell me about what your typical week is like. Not right now, when nobody's week is normal, but during the school year. How do you balance all the different things you're doing with school and YOSA and other playing opportunities and taking care of your plants? What do you spend? What is your week like as a conductor at YOSA?
Okay, well, so like during the school year, back when things were normal, my school week is, all day, 5 days a week. I'm at Bernal and I'm working with kids, nonstop, 7 classes a day, and it's amazing and it goes by so fast. And then a couple afternoons a week, I go over to UTSA and I assist with the string project over there. And the past 2 years, I've kind of been like in a supervising role, helping the student teachers. And then this year I was also teaching one of the classes, and that's been such a wonderful experience because, I remember being a student teacher in string project and how helpful that was. Just, so crucial to learning what I needed to learn before I went out to my first year of teaching. I felt a lot more successful in my first job because of string project. And that's like 2 days a week. I would go help string project, and we're still doing online stuff now with them as well. So they're playing, which is nice. And 1 or 2 evenings a week, I'll teach private lessons. And then on Sunday, of course, I get to go teach the Prelude Strings group, which I always look forward to. It is just such a joy to spend time with those YOSA kids. It's very different from the public school orchestra job. Very different responsibilities and a lot less paperwork I have to do myself. And I just, I get to go there and share music with the kids and help them discover things. And, since they're the little ones, everything is new for them. Anytime we learn something new, it's the first time they're learning it. And it's so exciting to see that discovery and their excitement. It just brings me so much joy. And how do I balance it? I'm not entirely sure because it is very busy. But I think I'm kind of the type of person that likes to stay busy. I don't know. I'm pretty organized. I have my planner and I've got everything scheduled out. And I try to have a lot of downtime though, as well, when I can. So just to, bring it back to what's happening right now, everything got thrown up on its head and now we have all of this time at home. It's kind of a struggle, but I'm learning to adapt and definitely still busy with everything that's going on online. So yeah.
Right. Well, we can see all the plants behind you. Is that a hobby of yours?
Yes.
And do you have other hobbies too? But first, tell us about the plants. Tell us what draws you to spending time taking care of plants.
I don't know. I discovered how much I love plants just only a few years ago, and there's just something so nice about taking care of them and watching them grow. And I guess that's pretty similar to being a music teacher, but and green's my favorite color. But yeah, they're my babies, and these are just some of my plants. I have more all throughout the house. But Yeah, I just love them. Other hobbies I have, I like to read a lot, which has been nice right now. So much more time to read, and I cook a lot and just hang out with my cat.
Nice. Well, we had a question from we had a question from Riley Amelia, and Riley asked, how hard is it to get into YOSA? I'm planning to audition. So Riley, I wanted to address that question and let you know that one of the main goals we have at YOSA is to involve as many young musicians as we can. So the answer is, depending on your level of skill and what instrument you play, it might not be very hard to get into some level of YOSA. We have 9 different groups. We have 2 full orchestras and 5 string orchestras and a wind ensemble and a flute choir. And so there are a lot of different places where we have room for musicians. We offer placement every year to more than 500 young musicians. That said, we also do turn away around 100 musicians every year because we don't have enough space for everybody who's interested. And so the best way to secure space in YOSA for yourself is to prepare as thoroughly as you can for your audition. And the more you prepare, the easier it is for you to be confident when you audition. This year, our auditions are actually going to be video auditions, and they're due in July. So if you go to the YOSA website, there are guidelines there on how video auditions should work. You record your video and submit it anytime before July 15th, and then we'll make placements at the end of the summer. And then the other thing I would say is that on the one hand, we try to offer placement to everybody, as many people as we can. On the other hand, to make it into our most advanced groups is difficult because the very best high school and middle school musicians in the area are often auditioning for YOSA. And so in some sections, there are not very many slots. And so, you have to be the best you can be to climb the ladder and to be in one of our advanced groups. But at the same time, we want to offer this experience to as many young musicians as we can. And so, Miss Boyd, that brings me to your work with Prelude Strings. Prelude Strings is our first group in the string orchestra family. It's our group for the least experienced musicians, which is usually the youngest. So you have a lot of those who are younger than your middle school students at Bernal. So what do you try to offer in Prelude Strings when you've got some students there who are in school groups, some students who are just taking private lessons or learning that way? What is it? What do you bring to the table with Prelude Strings that you hope gives them a valuable experience or added value in their musical journey?
Yeah, so at first it was a bit of a challenge trying to figure out what kind of music am I going to program for this orchestra that has such a wide range of students, age-wise and ability-wise. So I really try to choose music that is going to challenge each instrument section, but that is going to be fun for the kids to play. I think that's my main goal when choosing music for this particular group, because if they're not enjoying it and they're not having fun, they're not going to practice it. And they're not going to have a good time during rehearsal. So I try to have something, even maybe when they first look at it, they're like, oh, this doesn't look fun. This doesn't look exciting. Or maybe this doesn't look challenging. I try to show them the excitement in the music and teach them things that they don't know yet. Really getting to know them over the year has helped with that. Getting to know, okay, where are they at? So picking music for that first concert was kind of just like, well, who knows what they're going to be like. But luckily we picked music that was around the right level for them. And they've already grown so much. And I'm super bummed, we don't get to continue growing together, but to see them, from that first concert to the second concert was just amazing. And it doesn't matter what age they are. They're all so wonderful in that group. They're so goofy, and it's never dull being with them. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that interruption of the year, and I know that's been hard for all of us at YOSA. All the conductors and certainly all the musicians. It's strange to start this journey together and not be able to finish it this year. And I know that's an issue for people at school. That's an issue for people in all kinds of different aspects of life right now. But we're very mindful of what a strange sort of journey that's been for people. And that's part of why we're trying to come up with activities like these conversations, some of the audition videos we're posting, to help people look forward to the next chapter. Miss Boyd did a great job making cello videos for some of our audition excerpts. And we thank you for that. And if you haven't had a chance to check those out, everybody, if you go to YOSA's YouTube channel, you can find a whole playlist of audition excerpt coaching for the string audition excerpts at YOSA. We have a question for you from Sydney Silva, who heard you say that you like to read. And so she asked, who's your favorite author, or what's your favorite novel? If you look back over the last couple of years, what have you most loved reading?
Well, my favorite of all time, just because I grew up with it, is J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter books. And no matter how old I get, I always seem to go back to the Harry Potter books. It's just such a wonderful story, and she's such an amazing author. And, I tell people, like, if I was going to meet, one famous person in the world, it would be J.K. Rowling. We even went on a trip to Scotland, and we went to all the places that she was at when she was writing the books and that kind of thing. So she's my favorite of all time. But recently, I read a lot of like nonfiction, books about history, or books about teaching, and those kind of a little bit more like lighter reading. But yeah, any kind of book I really do enjoy.
Well, and you're sort of part of the Harry Potter generation, aren't you? I mean, weren't books coming out when you were a child? Like through elementary and middle school, there would have been new books coming out every couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that's the main reason why I'm just so attached to it. I remember reading the first book when I was like 10, and we were reading it in class. Our teacher was reading it out loud to us. And then, yeah, just like you said, every year that a new one would come out, it was like the most exciting thing. So it was like music and Harry Potter. Those were that was my life growing up.
Another question that we got came from Andre Alvarado, and he was asking, what's your opinion on composers like Steve Reich and Philip Glass? So he's talking about minimalism.
Yeah.
You and I never talked about this. I don't know what you think about minimalism. What do you have opinions on those composers?
I think it's fantastic. I love the evolution that composing is taking, and contemporary music is so exciting, and people just don't know enough about it. There's so much cool stuff out there. And I guess people are some people are like too attached to the old stuff, or just maybe afraid to venture into some of the more unique music that's out there. But Philip Glass is amazing. Oh my goodness, so wonderful.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who don't necessarily even know that there is new classical music. I think a lot of people, when they think of contemporary music, think of what's on the radio with pop music or hip hop or with rock or country or whatever style of popular music they're into. But in fact, there are just thousands and thousands of composers who are writing new music for string quartet or orchestra or operas. And Philip Glass and Steve Reich are great examples of that. They're the pioneers of the style called minimalism. And I'm not telling you this, Miss Boyd. I know you know this, but I know some of our viewers might not be familiar with this music. It's based fundamentally on the idea that repetition can bring musical value. That if you take something and repeat it a lot, that you can get kind of into a groove where every change that you make becomes incredibly significant and meaningful. For me, this is hugely important music in my life. I'm of a generation, and I'm a composer myself, and I'm of a generation where when you were a composer, listening to Steve Reich's music and listening to the music of another minimalist named John Adams was a huge part of how we grew up as composers, how we were trained. There's a piece by Steve Reich called Music for 18 Musicians that is just absolutely incredibly powerful music to me, and has all the drive and propulsion of rock and roll, but in this language that grows out of Stravinsky and other classical music, and I just love it. In the YOSA Philharmonic over the last few years, we've actually played a couple of pieces by Philip Glass. And I will say they were audience favorites. The audience loved them. I will also tell you the musicians in the YOSA Philharmonic didn't as much love them because it's very difficult to play music that has a lot of repetition in it. It's easy to lose your place, you know, when you have to play one 4-note figure for a whole page. It's real easy to lose your place. And so we learned a lot by doing that. It was a fun part of the journey. You know, I have students today who still, you know, a few years after we did those pieces, who tell me how much they remember that. Miss Boyd, what experiences did you have when you were in high school as a musician? What did you play that you still remember today? What were those things where you just went, man, that was amazing?
Well, actually, the first thing that comes to mind was in middle school. I think my last year of middle school, it was the Region Orchestra, and we were doing an arrangement, not even the real thing, but we were doing an arrangement to the finale from Beethoven 5. And I think that was probably one of the first times that I was like, wow, performing is amazing. You know, being in an orchestra is just where it's at. And it wasn't even the real deal. You know, I didn't get to play the real thing until later on in high school. But even that experience was so formative. In high school, some of the things that I remember most is probably some of the YOSA performances. I remember playing Swan Lake with Dina Johnson when we were in the symphony orchestra. And I just remember thinking, you know, I didn't really know too much about Swan Lake, but wow, what a cool thing. We're playing ballet music, you know, we're just kids. This is neat. And then going to Russia with YOSA when we went on one of the YOSA tours. Not so much even the music that we played, even though we played fantastic music on that tour, but being able to play that music in the places that we went was such an amazing experience that I'll never forget.
And that experience of going on tours is a really exciting thing, right? That thing of being able to take your music, I mean, even just to another city is exciting. But when you get to go all the way to Russia, that's a crazy, amazing experience.
Yeah, and it's something I talk to my school kids about all the time, how incredible it is that music can take you places if you stick with it. And, you know, we went to Russia with YOSA, and my high school, we got to go to Austria. And then when I was in college, we got to go to Italy. And so just so much of my travel has been as a cellist in an orchestra, working as a team and bringing music to strangers from completely different countries that speak a completely different language, and we're able to communicate with them. And it's such a joy to experience that now, but to have had that as a young person was just so transformational.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've been doing this all my adult life, right? Which sadly is longer than you've been alive. And so for me, more than half of the travel I've done anywhere has been orchestra tours. We've been going with different orchestras all over the world, and I've had the chance to see things and do things I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And in fact, also, it's a different kind of travel. Like, I love traveling with my family or on my own. It's great to be in complete control of what we do and go where we want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on an orchestra tour, you get to have experiences and go places that would never happen if you were an individual.
Right.
When we were in Spain with YOSA 2 years ago, on that tour, we met the U.S. ambassador to Spain, who had a private meeting with us. We went to the embassy and sat down, and he came out and just talked with us for a while about what it was like to be the U.S. ambassador to Spain and asking us questions about our tour. We got a chance to go to the Spanish palace of the king and queen. And while we were there, we got to go into the music room, which is not normally part of the tour because they knew we were an orchestra. There are all of these opportunities that come from that kind of travel. I wanted to mention, a lot of people have asked over the last couple of weeks about YOSA's plans for travel. We had a tour on the books for June this summer. We were going to play in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Because of the pandemic, Carnegie Hall will not be open this summer, and our other venues that we were planning to play in will not be open this summer. But fortunately, we have been able to postpone the whole tour by 1 year. And so we're going to do that same itinerary in June of 2021. Everybody who has already signed up for the tour is welcome to come back next year, but we will also be opening the tour up to new members of the YOSA Philharmonic for next year. And so after auditions this summer, people who move into the YOSA Philharmonic will have the opportunity to potentially join that tour next summer if that's something that they're interested in. So there'll be more information coming out about that in the next few weeks. We got another question from our old friend Susie Espinosa, who was asking about the YOSA Rising Star Fellowship. We're going into our third year of YOSA Rising Star Fellows, which is a program for Black and Latino musicians in San Antonio, where they receive resources for participation in YOSA and private lessons and all kinds of other musical opportunities and support. And nominations for that happened this spring. They closed in March, and we have named a class of 6 finalists for next year's class of Rising Star Fellows. Those finalists normally would be invited to come to our summer camp. We are still planning on summer camp in July, but we don't know for sure whether we're going to be able to hold the summer camp in July. And so we'll be in touch with the Rising Star Fellows finalists about that opportunity and whether it will, if we're not able to hold the camp, then we'll have another process for having the finalists audition to become Rising Star Fellows for next year. And if this is something you haven't heard about, you can go to the YOSA website or just Google YOSA Rising Star Fellows. We've got a great website at YOSA, and so if there's anything about our programs that you're wondering about, you can go to yosa.org and explore the website. Or of course, there's this magical thing called Google, where if you type in a specific part of YOSA, it'll usually take you right to the right page on the website to tell you more about that. And feel free to come check that out. Ms. Boyd, we also got a question asking, what other types of music do you enjoy playing, either on cello or do you play any other instruments? Do you play music besides classical music?
I do. Actually, I used to be in a band when I was in college and a little bit after college. We did kind of like indie folk rock music, and it was a lot of fun. I really miss performing with them. And I was the only bowed string instrument in the band, so they thought I was super cool. But I was amazed with all the other musicians in the band because they actually didn't read music. They weren't trained as in the same sense that I was trained, and I learned so much from them. My ear really got better just being in that group, learning how to improvise and other things. It was such an incredible experience. But then they moved away, so our band is no more. Maybe we'll do a reunion tour or something. But
what was the band called?
Oh, well, it was called the Matt Adler Band. So our lead singer was Matt Adler, and he pulled us all together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that too, that when you play with musicians who are not classical musicians, that very often there's more reliance on the ear and more of a necessity to actually listen carefully to the people you're playing with, which of course we're trying to do in classical music all the time. But when you don't have the notes on the page in front of you and you need to learn how to find the lines through the chords and how to use your ear to respond to what somebody plays, how to improvise, or even when you're playing parts that have been planned out in advance, just doing that by ear is a whole different exercise. It's fun to have the singer go, Katie, can you play this? And then sing you something, and then you have to figure that out and play it back on the cello. That's
right. Yeah, it's definitely scary at first and at times, but you learn so much through that.
And did you find that when you then go back to classical music, so to speak, that your musicianship has been strengthened, that you play those other things better because your ear has developed and you know how to listen differently?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely made me a better musician in everything I do. Performing in an orchestra, teaching a lot. It helped my memorization. It helped a lot with many things. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, I had a great opportunity, gosh, now it's 20 years ago, but I had this amazing opportunity to work with the lead singer from the band Fish, which I lived in Vermont at the time, and Fish is a big deal in Vermont, and especially 20 years ago, Fish was a big deal in Vermont. And so I worked with their lead singer, Trey Anastasio, on his first adventures writing orchestral music. but then also doing some orchestral arrangements for some of his solo albums. And for me, man, I learned so much from that process. I had grown up playing rock and roll and playing a little bit of jazz, and I had an okay ear for that. But to sit in a room with somebody who's just a world-class musician in the world of rock and roll, and have him play or sing something and then need to respond to that, to write it down, to add lines to it, to figure out how to put it together with other elements, made me such a better musician. And it actually made me a better conductor. I can hear better in the orchestra now because of what I learned from this rock guitarist who really showed me things about how to hear how chords are tuned and how things fit together. It was really fascinating. And of course, I learned a lot of that in my classical training too. But I can't emphasize enough how valuable it is for all of us to play multiple musical styles and to listen to multiple musical styles. So with that in mind, what kind of music do you like to listen to? I mean, I know you like to listen to Brahms, but what about music outside of classical music? What are your favorite things to listen to?
Well, I'm actually kind of starting to get into jazz. I didn't really, know anything about jazz going through school. And I'm starting to listen more and listen to things that I probably would have thought were just weird a while ago. And I'm like, wow, this is really amazing and really interesting stuff. I'm just starting to dip my toes into different types of jazz.
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. I always preach that you should listen to lots of different kinds of music, and sometimes my own children make fun of me because I juxtapose things that are weird. Like, it's very common when I put my phone on shuffle for it to go, even within a playlist that I've made, for it to go from Prince to Stravinsky to the Beatles to 80s pop to Kendrick Lamar. There's a lot of music that I really, really love. But I feel like one of the challenges for me, the older I get, is reminding myself to keep listening to new music. And so I've been trying to do that a lot. This week, I've been listening to the new Fiona Apple album. She's an artist who's been around for a long time, but this new album is really, really interesting and challenging. It's really, really complicated, engaging, difficult music.
Wow.
But anyway, I think it's important to just keep trying to find new stuff, because even if it doesn't become my favorite music, it's just part of how I continue to grow and learn as a musician. So, well, listen, everybody, we're grateful to all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much. Every Sunday afternoon for the next couple of weeks, through the next several weeks, we're going to have a different YOSA conductor on. Miss Boyd, thanks for being with us today. And
thank you so much.
Take good care of yourself. Stay healthy. Everybody out there, we'll see you next Sunday. And everybody, wash your hands. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.